We can begin. So we are in Likutei Sichos, volume 1, page 239, and we are discussing the difference between the belief in the Creator, in Hashem, between a Jew and a non-Jew, even Chasidei Umot haOlam. Chasidei Umot haOlam admit, they acknowledge, they agree that there's a creator, because rationally you come to the conclusion that there is the creator. However, that's exactly it. For the non-Jew, even the pious, the Chasidei Umot haOlam, it is a rational, logical proof. However, for the Jew, it doesn't come from rationale. It's not intelligence. It is emunah. It is faith, which is beyond nature, beyond logic. That's what we're gonna pick up now. So the last 4 lines on the page, aber. All right, left-hand column, last 4 lines. This is, of course, in Yiddish, not in Hebrew. Aber, however, the emunah von Yidden, the belief or the faith of Jews, kommt nicht von Welt, doesn't come from the world. In other words, it's a very basic difference, because is it, so to say, from up downward or from down upward? Meaning, by the non-Jew, it starts, the given is that there's a world. The given is there's a universe. There's a created entity. And now we, so to say, backtrack, or we follow the steps through nature, through science, and we come to the conclusion that there has to be a creator. That is the rational approach. For the Jew, there is the faith, which is higher than the universe, higher than nature. Yidden, Jews, are in essence connected and bound up with godliness or godhood. The Mele, so automatically, legt sich bei sei, it makes, it's, how would I translate it into English? I would say it makes sense, but it's not, because sense implies logic.
It's a tautology, it's self-evident.
What?
Maybe self-evident, it's a tautology.
Well, legt sich means that it sits well. It sits with them. That's the literal translation.
Oh, that's good.
Or it lies with them.
Yeah.
In other words, in there, it's like, so to say, sort of, not exactly, but sort of the expression, a gut feeling. It's there, but it's a gut feeling doesn't have to always be true. But this is absolute.
Right.
So it sits with them. Bemele legt sich bei sei ab Göttlichkeit. So godliness is settled in them, in the Jew. Punkt, next page. Exactly, wie bei Umot haOlam, exactly like by the nations of the world, by the rest of the world, by the non-Jew, is their inyan, their idea is olam, world, the universe. In other words, just like any normal, rational human being knows that there's a universe. He doesn't have to understand much about it, but he just knows of existence. He sees, he feels, that's just natural. Here I am living in a world. Azoi is by Yidden, so too by the Jews, their inyan elikus. So by them, their idea is godliness. In other words, it doesn't have to be that it's necessarily conscious, but just like every human being has and takes for granted that there is a world,
Yes, please.
so too by every Jew, it's a given that there is God. B'meila, so subsequently, is in them nitoken agbolos hateva. So therefore, there are no limitations of nature in this, because it's like this is their whole existence, this is their whole entity. Und es legt sich bei sie ab b'pshitus. That's a key word, and it sits with them in the most simple, obvious way. Also, godliness which is above and beyond nature, not only the level of Hashem, which is within nature, but also Hashem, which transcends creation, transcends nature. That as well is, it sits obviously with the Jew. In other words, it's a given. So a Jew needs to do nothing, just like if you want to take an individual, a human being, and let him know that he lives in a world, you don't have to do that. I mean, it's like the most natural thing. You are. We're not asking you to understand how the world works, and we're not asking you to understand why there are these laws of nature. We're not asking the person to understand all the laws of physics, but just that there is a world, that the sun rises and sets, and that there's day and night and seasons. Those are just facts that every human being experiences. So too by the Jew, when it comes to relating to Hashem, when it comes to Hashem, even that level which transcends nature and is above nature. Next paragraph. Azoi wie es wird erklärt in Chassidus, as it is explained in Chassidus. Now take a look at footnote number 3. You may be familiar with sources. So it says, take a look, zeh, that means look, in the Siddur, referring to the Siddur in Dach with Chassidus. One second. So the Siddur in Dach, Dibra Maschil, Sheishes Yomim, which is the first one. So the Maimer from the Alter Rebbe or the Mittler Rebbe of Sheishes Yomim, and then Shar HaEmuna, which is from the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe, and then V'Kibel HaYehudim from Tafresh Pei Zayin. That is a discourse of the sixth Rebbe, or referred to as the Rebbe Rayatz, that he said 99 years ago, and that is a famous mimer, actually, whole story about that, and that actually is part of what led to his arrest for spreading Judaism and so forth. That was 99 years ago.
Rabbi Turen, I think I've read or no, I have the two previous ones. And because the Sheshes Yom, is that the 6th day of Pesach?
Yes.
Okay, so we're familiar with that one. But this third one by the Rebbe Rayatz, I am not. Could you just give me a title or if it's...
Yeah, sure.
Or because help me with my
Okay, so it says it's printed in a couple of places, and the opening words, the verse that mimer starts with is from the Megillah. It was said on a leap year, on a Jewish leap year, so it was Purim Katan. It was said on the 14th of the first Adar. And that would be V'Kibel HaYehudim. And the year is Tafresh Pei Zayin, 5687.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, which would correspond to 1927. Here, let me actually get the mimer. Give me a second.
Oh, thank you.
protected when he's trying to find just exactly. Yeah, so that's it.
Okay, so he's getting this. It's really hard like this. 1 second. Okay, so it's printed in the Rebbe Rayatz's book of Maimorim. Well, it's officially, the year is Tafshin Yud Aleph, 5711, even though that's after his passing. But the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach continued to print his Maimorim of his father-in-law.
Did the Rebbe's have to be careful living in Russia what they printed?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, because that's what I'm kind of suspecting when we're going over the Tanya, because they don't mention a whole lot of details about non-Jews. They talk about the Umot haOlam, but they don't talk about, like, for instance, the Hasidei Umot haOlam that much. And I'm wondering if they, if, for instance, the Alter Rebbe, if he had to self-censor a bit so he didn't come across as being, what's the word I'm looking for? Seeking converts or trying to coerce non-Jews.
The Tanya, he was very, very precise and exact and careful in the Tanya. What happened was he insisted that it be, perfect, every word, every letter, and nonetheless, they somehow they had censors working for the government, and any book, I mean, for sure, Jewish book, he always went. The non-Jews would censor it, even if it was being printed in a Jewish printing press. For example, it'll say over there the common thing that it says all over the place: akum. Instead of saying nachri or goy, we have it in Mishnah, in Talmud. So even in the Tanya, instead of saying haOlam, it will say oivdei kechavim or something like that.
Right.
That's the extent of it.
Well, my point is, I mean, I agree. He is accurate, but I'm talking about, for instance, in reference to Hasidei Umot haOlam, he talks very favorably in some instances about Hasidei Umot haOlam, but he doesn't mention it at all in Tanya. And I'm wondering if it would seem as like an outreach or something, so he chose not to talk about it so much.
I would not.
Okay.
Here we go now. So this mimer,
because it opposes a lot what Christianity teaches, which is like a binary type system. Telling Hasidei Umot haOlam that they have a Halek Olam Haba is a big deal.
Yeah,
it would go against like the orthodoxy of the land, the Christianity of the land.
One second.
Excuse me.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay, so the first place it's printed is hard to get hold of, this book. It's called Hatomim. But then it's been reprinted many times because this is one of those discourses, one of the Maimarim that the Rebbe Melech Moshiach instructed many times to study it, and he himself has a number of Maimarim based on this one, explaining it. So it's relatively a long Maimar of the Rebbe Rayatz. So he gets into faith, Emunah. So he says over there the same point that is made in the Sidrim Dach and in Shar HaEmunah.
Excellent.
Yeah, where he speaks about the difference between the Emunah of Umot haOlam and Yisrael, the Jewish people.
Okay, good.
With the Soivev and the Memalei.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In other words, it's actually, it would be mainly in the 9th chapter of the Maimer.
Okay.
Maimer itself contains a total of 15 chapters, and in the 9th chapter, he says over there that what we're about to say over here in the Sikha. Okay. So what does it say? So it's explained in Chassidus, and he brings 3 references. Der chiluk, the difference, fun emunas umot haOlam, between the faith of the nations of the world, mit emunas Yisrael, as versus the faith of the Jews. As emunas Yisrael, the belief or the faith of the Jews, is in Shem Havaya, is in the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the tetragrammaton name, which is Haya, Hoive, V'yihiyeh Ke'echad. One of the explanations of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is that it actually contains in it, all in one word, past, present, future. In other words, in Hebrew, the way to say the past is haya, was. The way to say present is hoiveh. Instead of a yud, it's a vav. And the way to say future is yihiyeh. So it's all, the root is the same letters for past, present, future. A yud can be interchanged with a vav. A vav is an extended yud. And then you have the hey. So really, the root letters are hey and a yud and a hey, or a vav instead of a yud. So the word that yud kei vav kei, that name of Hashem, is a combination of all those 3 tenths. Which, how do you have past, present, and future all in one word? Because that refers to Hashem l'mayla mehateva, as he transcends and is above nature. So he is, was, and will be all at once. So that is the Jew. The Jew is connected and believes and has faith in Hashem as Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the faith or the belief of the nations of the world, of the non-Jews, is in Shem Elokim, is in the name Elokim, which is brought down in different places, and the Alter Rebbe in Tanya also says it. The gematria hateva, the numerical value of the name Elokim, and don't make a mistake, it's with a hey, not a kuf. That'll throw you off. Kuf is with 100 and hey is 5. So the name Elokim, which is 1 and 30 and 5 and 10 and 40, is the same numerical value as the nature, which is 5 and 9 and 2 and 70. So they equal the same thing. No coincidence. In other words, the non-Jew relates and believes in Hashem as the creator and as the ruler and as the controller of nature. But that's it. And we actually see this by a prime example of a non-Jew in the Torah. wie Paroi mit seine Chartumim haben gesagt. So King Pharaoh, when Moshe first arrived on the scene as a messenger of Hashem to redeem the Jewish people, so he introduces himself. Of course, Pari knew who he was. He grew up in the palace, but he was away for many years. So he comes back and he introduces himself as the messenger of Hashem. And the way he refers to Hashem is with the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. He says, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei sent me here to take out his people, the Hebrews, the Jews. So what does Paroi, along with his magicians, say? Lo yodaiti es havaya. I do not know Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. I don't know such a Hashem. And then what do his magicians and advisors tell him at a certain point after one of the plagues, and then they repeat it again? See, they were expert magicians. As a matter of fact, at one point, they're making fun. And they tell Moshe, you're making all these tricks. You're turning water into blood. What are you coming to bring? We are the capital of magic tricks. What are you doing over here? But then when it came to a particular plague where they were not able to duplicate or copy, so they turned to Paroi and they said, Etzba Elikim hi. Sorry, that's the finger of Hashem. That's no trick. That's not magic. This is from, but they didn't say it's the finger of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. They said Etzba Elikim. So we have two expressions here. One is Paroi says, I don't know Havaya, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and his advisors and magicians tell him this is the finger of Elikim. So there we see that non-Jews relate to Elikim, not to Havaya. Clara Geret. Let's speak more clearly now. This is Gimel. See it?
Yes. For me,
Okay.
it's on the second page, but yeah.
Okay. Clearer Geret. Clearer spoken. In jeder Inyan in Welt, in every idea in the world, sucht, searches, der Nicht-Yid, the non-Jew, die Teva von dem, the nature of it. The non-Jew is always lurking, always searching for the nature. What is the biology? What is the physics? What is the chemistry of it? Seiden, except when he sees an open, revealed miracle, which has no bearing and no hold in nature. Muzer moy design, at that point, the non-Jew must admit that this is a godly something. So that's fine. He can relate to that. But otherwise, as long as there's no open miracle, no law of nature being broken in front of his very eyes, he always will search for what's going on over here in the laws of nature. And even then, when there's an open miracle and he admits that this is the hand of Hashem, Avifuler ken viler es onton in levushi ateva. To whatever extent he's able to, he wants to explain, to enclose it within the laws of nature, even though it breaks nature. And he admits that this is the hand of Hashem, but still he tries to minimize the miracle part of it and maximize the hold of nature. I mean, to take it to extreme, now I wouldn't say that this is your average non-Jew, but of course, there are those that claim that the splitting of the sea was a natural phenomena, and they say that it's possible that every, with all the factors involved in the weather, and it just so happened to be that just when the Jewish nation needed it, and they were right there on the shore of the Sea of Reeds, a wind came and it split, and they went through. And then when the Egyptians went in to follow, then it closed in on them. But that's according to the laws of statistics. They'll tell you that that is called impossible, even though nothing theoretically, according to statistics or whatever, is really impossible. But once it reaches a certain point when there's a chance of 1 in billions or trillions, that's basically called impossible. Anyhow, Aberayid lahavdil. However, a Jew, on the other hand, is in yeder zach was erzet. Everything that he sees, that he witnesses, zuchter bald, he immediately searches the getlichkeit in them, the godliness in it, even if it's not a miracle, even if it is something natural that Hashem is doing through nature. But the Jew is always, by nature, no pun intended, always trying to find the hand of Hashem in it. So in other words, they're coming from two opposite, not just different, opposite approaches. The non-Jew is approaching it from bottom up, as we said, from nature. And therefore, everything is Hashem through the tool that he created called nature. Now, if it's beyond that, okay, so he'll admit now Hashem is working beyond nature, and even then he'll try to minimize it. Whereas the Jew is looking at it from supernatural, and everything is coming from Hashem, who transcends nature and is not bound by nature, and therefore he's always looking for that level of Yud Kei Vav Kei, even when there's no miracle and it's just natural events. Un Punkt, and exactly, the Aino Yehudi, that a non-Jew, Zucht, Afilu in a Neis Galui, is searching even in a revealed open miracle, B'chol Amine Hishtadlus, with all sorts of efforts. The non-Jew is trying so much to masbir zayin, to explain as dos is mitzad teva. It's a miracle, but he tries to say no, it's a natural phenomenon. It's farkert by a Yidin. It's the opposite by a Jew. Afilu, even in an Inyan, in an idea, was in flug, that seemingly at first glance is there in ganze mitzad teva, is totally nature. It's totally natural. There's no miracle there. Stellt sich, the Jew places mit toikef, with the strength von am kshe oiref, of being a stubborn nation, which is, we're using the term which is written originally in the literal simple meaning, is a very derogatory statement about the Jews. But here we're using it, as we often do, we're borrowing the term in a very positive way. In other words, it's no secret the Jews are stubborn. Now, is stubborn good or bad? Well, it depends on the situation. But if you're just looking at stubbornness in a objective way, it's usually very negative. Like, don't be so stubborn.
Oh.
You know, little immature children are very stubborn. The more intelligent you get, the less stubborn you get. The more mature you get, the less stubborn you get.
Oh.
So, you know, stubborn in general is a negative trait. But it can be positive, as we're saying over here. Literally, am means nation. Kishay means hard. Oirif is the back of the neck.
Oh.
Meaning sort of like being closed-minded, that you're not ready to turn your head in any direction. You have a stiff back of the neck. Untainet, and with this stubbornness, the Jew claims, das is neat. This is not mitzad hateva, coming from nature, nor mitzad likus, but rather it's coming from godliness. So in other words, you have over here two people, the Jew and the non-Jew. The non-Jew, if there's no miracle happening, that's it. So it's all nature. Hashem runs through nature. He created nature. Everything is happening, the hand of Hashem, but it's through nature. And if he sees a miracle, he admits it, but he tries to minimize it, and he tries so hard to say, well, it's not really a miracle, or it's not really that great of a miracle, or it's not to that extent, and so on. The Jew, on the other hand, when he sees a miracle, great. That's natural for him to identify the miracle. And even when there's no miracle, he's searching, where can I see the godliness in that, instead of searching for nature. So they're two opposite approaches. Und wie schon gerät, and as we've already spoken on a different occasion, beperush divrei haYerushalmi, in the explanation of the words of what it says in the Jerusalem Talmud. We know that in Talmud, we have the Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, and then we have the Yerushalmi Talmud. So in Talmud Yerushalmi, there is a statement about the Jew, Ma'amin b'chei haOlamim, that he believes in the life, or in the giver of life of all the worlds, v'zeireya, and he sows the seeds. Meaning, here's the explanation that's given. Chach, although Alevesin, all know, as al pi teva, that based on nature, everyone knows, oib men farzeit, if one sows, plants, a kerendol, a seed, in the erd, in the earth, faxt, it grows. Everyone knows that rule. You know, you take a seed, you plant it in the earth, it will grow. Vet aber, however, ayid zich oif dem nit farlozen. The Jew won't rely on that. The Jew does not rely on the fact that if you plant a seed, it's going to grow. Ervet nit nemen, the Jew won't take a kerendel, a seed, un ima reinlegen, and place it in their erd, in the earth. Paterin azach b'yodayim, waste something actively with your hands. You're burying a good seed. The Jew won't do that. Take a seed and bury it in the ground? No way. Zulib dem was mitzad chukei hateva darf wachsen, just because by laws of nature it's supposed to produce and it's going to grow. Who cares about nature? So in other words, why would I do such a foolish act of taking a seed and planting it in the ground? I'm burying it. Just because nature dictates that the chances are it's going to grow. Chukei hateva, the laws of nature, seinen bayim nit genug, are not enough for the Jew, farlezlich, reliable, as tzulib zeh, that because of them, because of laws of nature, solar patrin azach b'yadayim, he's going to waste something. So it's a very interesting approach. In other words, you're telling me that laws of nature tell you that the chances are, if you take a healthy seed and you plant it properly in the earth, and it gets whatever it's supposed to get, it gets watered and it gets the sunlight, whatever is supposed to happen, you can basically be confident that it's going to grow. The Jew says, that's just nature. I can't rely on nature and take a good seed and destroy it. The reason, farvos erzeit, so why does the Jew plant seeds? Is vayol, because eriz ma'amin b'chei haOlamim, because he believes in the life, the giver of life of the worlds, un boiteyach inim, and he trusts in him, hazayin zriya, that this person, the Jews, sowing of the seed, but matzmiach zayin, is going to grow, sprout out, and give produce. So it's a very different approach. That's the meaning of what the Talmud says, that the Jew believes in Hashem and sows his seeds. You could say, what do you mean? Any farmer does that. You don't have to be a believer in Hashem. An atheist could be a farmer or can be a gardener. So you say, the Jew, it's not that the connection is because he says, I would not plant the seed if it was just for nature. He doesn't rely on nature. He says, nature is irreliable. It's only because he believes in Hashem. So just because something repeated itself over and over again, 100 times, to the point that it became what we would call natural, the Jew says, I'm not going to rely on that. I'm not going to take such a gamble. So why are you doing it? Because Hashem. I believe that this time Hashem is going to make it grow. Well, yeah, it's always been growing. Don't give me always. Hashem makes it grow.
That's profound. I like that.
Okay, so we are up to Dalit. Okay?
Very good. Thank you, Rabbi Turen. That was profound. I'll have to think about that more.
Okay, very well.
Thank you so much. And class tomorrow.
Mirz Hashem, yes. See you then. Okay, take care. See you.